Welcome to Brain Info Live, for everyone in the brain health community. Brain Info Live is about hope, health, support, education, and you. Whether you're living with Alzheimer's or a caregiver, family member, or loved one of someone who is, Brain Info Live is here for everybody.
Your fitness guru. I want to welcome you to Brain Info Live. Today, we're going to do dumbbell body sculpting. So I need you to get ready in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's get started. I want your hands in a hammer position, and we're just going to tap. You ready? Let's go. Great. Now we're going to go angle, underhand and angle out. Let's go. Come on. Great. Now we're going to go to the side. We'll go to the side. Boom. All right. Elbows bent and let's go. Angle back. And when we go angle, I'm going to push big. Ready? Let's go. All right. Now we're going straight back. When we go straight back, I want you here and back. Here we go. Ready? Go. Great job. Other leg forward. Bicep curl. Set. Go. Come on now. Y'all keep it going. Great job. Now we're going to go angle. When we go angle, let's high pull. Ready? Let's go. Come on. Come on. 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to the side. When we go to the side, I want to do a over and under. Ready? Go. 4. Come on. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, angle back. Hammer, and I'm gonna go out at an angle. You ready? Let's go. 5. Come on. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Woo! Shake it off, shake it off. Now we're going straight back. When we go straight back, I want your arms bent, and we're going here. You ready? Set, and go. Come on. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Woo! Shake it off now. Now we're going to double tap, and I'm going to shorten it with a high pull. Ready? Go. Great job. I'm going to put it in front. Double. Ready? Angle. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to go side and to the rear. Ready? And let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Woo! Now we're going to go angle back. With angle, I'm going to go all the way up. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Other side. 1, 2, 3, job. I'm gonna go straight back and I'm gonna alternate. Ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great job, great job. Okay, let's add a little stretching in. Legs straight. We're gonna go down, up, open. 5 reps, just 5. Ready, go. 2, come on. 3, 4, 5. Okay, this next one, you can make adjustments for 1. That's your motion. 5 right, 5 left. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Other side, you ready? Let's go. 1, come on. 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job, great job. We just did a little body sculpting with a little lower body, and plus I added a little bit of core in there. I'm J. Lou, your fitness guru, and see you later, bye.
Oh my goodness. I love how he just walks away. So welcome to the world of live internet television. I'm Mike Kincaid, your host here at Brain Info Live. Welcome to our 17th episode. And look at that, I forgot to tell you also who I am. I am the Director of Diversity Outreach for the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And today's episode is going to be, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have a great conversation with Dr. Jonathan Jackson. And in fact, I've got to read you a little disclaimer. We are using, I never can pronounce this drug correctly, Lecanamab, in our program today purely as a case study to learn what questions to ask and how to dissect information when a new therapeutic becomes available. That's what we're going to be talking about. You may have heard about a new drug targeting Alzheimer's, and Jonathan is going to be hanging out with us later today to have that conversation about what this drug is, how it came about, and how it may be able to help you if you're interested in learning more about it. Now, again, as always, this is a conversation. This is not a monologue. This is a dialogue. And so you'll be able to ask questions in the chat, in the comment section under the ask button, and on Facebook in the comment sections. Now, Alexa, our amazing magician, is going to show you a little bit about how to do that. But you see that up in the chat section. And as always, for those folks who want to be the secret squirrel folks, you can do it without putting your name in. So I'm really excited about what we're going to be talking about today. But before we even get to that, and I want to thank J. Lou for once again rocking the house, starting out the show. But before we get to that, we've got a really interesting video. It's from CNN. It's a discussion about a potential breakthrough in treating Alzheimer's disease. It's about the lecanemab drug, and it features Dr. Sanjay Gupta and Brianna Keeler. So Alexa, without further ado, let's go to the videotape.
A potential breakthrough this morning for millions of Americans affected by Alzheimer's. A new antibody treatment for the disease could slow the progression of cognitive decline by 27%. Here to explain this major development is CNN chief medical correspondent and author of Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, this is so important to talk about because past medications have improved cognition perhaps, but not that much. This is a big number.
If this holds up, if this data holds up, and so far we've just heard from the manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies themselves, but if it holds up, it could be a very big deal in the world of Alzheimer's, because as you say, there's not been a significant treatment that has had this degree of improvement in these patients really in a long time, if ever. So let me sort of talk you through this. It's a new drug. It's something that people have been watching for some time. Lecanamab is the name of the drug. They basically had 1,800 people They had early stage Alzheimer's. Part of the group got this drug, the other group got placebo. And what they found after about 18 months, Brianna, was that there was a significant decline in overall cognitive worsening in the group that got the drug. So this is the thing. This is what people have been looking for some time now. We know people with Alzheimer's, they continue to progress in terms of cognitive decline. If this could slow that down, that's significant. Now, a couple things. The way that they measure this cognitive decline, they ask questions about memory, about orientation, about problem solving. When you see 27%, you may say, well, that doesn't seem like that big a number, but in terms of your overall function, your ability to function in your everyday life, it can make a big difference for somebody who has early stage Alzheimer's in terms of how well they can function, perhaps even independently or in a home setting. So that would be a big deal. The other thing, and this is going to be a big topic of discussion as well, was that when you looked at this drug, it did seem to have an effect on these plaques in the brain. A lot of people have heard this, the amyloid plaques and their association with the disease Alzheimer's. What they found was that there was a decrease in those plaques that you see on the right side of your screen there. Now, whether those two things are directly connected or not is still unclear, because as you correctly point out, Brianna, there have been drugs in the past which were very good at getting rid of those plaques, but didn't do as much in terms of stalling or slowing cognitive decline. This drug seems to do both. So again, it's early in terms of actually collecting this data. It hasn't been put in a journal yet. FDA has got to weigh in on this. It's now been put forward for accelerated approval, but it could be a very big deal if it all holds, Brianna.
Yeah, I know we need more data, but let's hope that this is something to be very excited about. Sanjay, thank you for walking us through it.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let me read my guest's. Good. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. Let me read your bio. Dr. Jonathan Jackson is the Executive Director of the Community Access, Recruitment, and Engagement, what we call CARE, Research Center at Massachusetts General Hospital, and is an Assistant Professor of Neurology at Harvard Medical School. CARE investigates the impact of diversity and inclusion on the quality of human subjects research and leverages deep community entrenchment to build trust and overcome barriers to clinical trial participation. Jonathan's research focuses on inequalities in clinical settings that affect underserved populations, and he has received generous funding for this work from the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, Massachusetts General Hospital, and the National Institute of Health, including a prestigious National Institute of Health Pioneer Work Award to advance this work. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Jonathan, I think you're muted. I can't hear you. So, like I said, welcome to live television, because I was able to hear Dr. Sengupta, and I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Alexa, any idea? I'm telling you, the video gremlins is just going crazy. So you know what, Jonathan, what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a preview of our poll, which is something we've never done that before. But we're gonna give while our internet Alexa goddess fixes the work with what we got going on. I'm gonna do a preview of our poll. I'm gonna talk a little bit about our poll. And then we'll come back and we'll try and reboot this. All right. So in other words, that's my way of saying don't go nowhere. And it's funny because the usual audience, you guys know that we usually do the poll, and usually you get the answers to the poll, to the question, in the conversation, which you would have done. But you kind of got that from Dr. Sengupta. Yes, I can hear you. So
I don't know what
Jonathan,
happened.
can you hear me? All right. Well, you know what? Alexa, let's take away the poll, and let's jump back into our. This is that kind of day. I'm telling you right now. It's. But hey, we're here. I got you here. You know what, Jonathan? I want to do this. Dr. Sengupta did a really good job, but he explained it in a lot of medical ease.
Yes.
And I'm not a neurologist, nor do I play one on television. So let's talk about what is lecanemab. What is it?
Mhm.
Why is it news? And why is it so important for those affected by Alzheimer's?
Yeah, happy to give a quick and easy overview of lecanemab. The first thing to pay attention to is that all of these therapeutic drugs that are still in the investigational phase, when they're still running the clinical trials, they have these words that end in MAB, M-A-B. That stands for monoclonal antibody, and that tells you about how the drug in question is designed to work. So lecanemab is a monoclonal antibody that is designed to try to help the body remove some of the problematic plaques that we often see in the brain that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. So you might have heard about plaques and tangles, amyloid plaques and tau tangles. Lecanemab is really designed to focus on the amyloid plaques, but what it does that seems to make a difference is that it removes the stuff that makes up the plaques before they turn into plaques. These are the fancy term for these are fibrils or protofibrils. So if you think about amyloid plaques as like saran wrap, where you try to stretch it out and you try to tear it, and it gets tangled up and it crumples up in a ball by itself. Lecanemab would be trying to clear that stuff out of the brain before it turns into a tangled ball. Right when it's starting to twist, right when it's starting to go wrong, at that early process of that saran wrap, failing to tear in the right way. Lecanemab is planting a flag and whistling for the body's immunotherapeutic response to come in and clear out this problematic stuff that will turn into an amyloid plaque. So what's nice about lecanemab is that it's designed to try to take care of amyloid before it becomes these big problematic plaques that fill up the brain.
All right, so let me jump in. So we got the drugs that have been on the market for the last few decades have been designed to, for lack of a better description, slow down the progression of the disease, or what I affectionately call a
Yes.
speed bump.
Mhm.
And it sounds like this particular drug is going to do more than just be a speed bump. It might actually be able to stop it. Would that be correct?
So yeah, so we're not quite sure if it will stop it or even how much it will slow it down just yet. The only
Okay.
information that we have is a press release from the companies that made the drug. The rest of us scientists will have to wait until November, late November, to find out more. But everything that is currently on the market for Alzheimer's disease, I think what you call a speed bump, I think of the way that I tend to talk about it is it's like taking cold medicine. If you take a cold medicine, it's not going to get rid of your cold, but it will help the symptoms for a good amount of time. If you wanted to take Aricept and Namenda, if you wanted to take something that's currently available for Alzheimer's disease, it will help you with the symptoms, but it will not affect those plaques and tangles. It will not necessarily reverse or change the trajectory around cognitive decline in any meaningful way. This new drug, lecanemab, is designed to be what we call disease modifying. So it's like treating the cold itself instead of just the symptoms. So in this case, the goal is to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease by removing the things that cause Alzheimer's disease. And that is what we're hoping will be a game changer here.
Okay, all right. So you know what? We've got a question, which is one of the things I love about doing the show. So they found data for less cognitive decline. Now I'm going to ask you to explain what that means. Uh, how do they measure that definitively? So that's a two-part question. First of all, let's talk about what is cognitive decline and how do they measure that definitively?
Yeah, so cognitive decline is a way of thinking about how our memory and thinking abilities change over time. One way to think about cognitive decline is the things that are easy for you to remember when you're 25 are maybe not so easy to remember when you're 75. And so there is a degree of cognitive decline that we think of as typical or normal for adults. Your memory still works, it just may not work quite the way that it used to. So that is one element of cognitive decline. In Alzheimer's disease, that process is dramatically accelerated. It's way worse. So, your ability to think and remember stuff is much more impaired if you're a 75-year-old with Alzheimer's disease compared to a 75-year-old without Alzheimer's disease. So that is what is meant by cognitive decline. There are a few different ways to measure it in a clinical trial environment where you have to be very, very precise. And so for this particular study, they use something called the CDR sum of boxes. And CDR stands for Clinical Dementia Rating Scale. And so the Clinical Dementia Rating Scale, without getting into like a long and boring history, is an assessment that was developed at Washington University back in the 1970s and 80s. And it was designed to try to touch on multiple aspects of thinking and memory. So it includes little measures and questions around memory, the way that you can kind of orient and get through your day-to-day, thinking about community affairs, home and hobbies, your ability to take care of yourself, personal care, like showering regularly, being able to get dressed, judgments and problem solving, really, really simple math questions from time to time. So the CDR sum of boxes is a very sensitive way of looking at changes over time across these many different areas of cognition, of thinking and memory. And so what they were able to find in this particular study, or what they're claiming so far, is that for individuals who took this drug over a period of 1.5 years, they saw less cognitive decline. So they remained more stable over time if you take the drug than if you don't. And so whether that translates into a meaningful difference, whether this means that grandma has more good days than bad ones, we still don't know yet. But according to this very sensitive measure of cognitive decline, of thinking and memory and attention, it does seem like this drug was able to make a difference.
Okay, so we keep using the word studies in clinical trials. So I realized we should talk about what is a clinical trial, and did it work on the? Okay, what's a clinical trial? And you know, and I know that there's one group that gets the particular drug. Dr. Sengupta talked about this. One that gets the drug, and one that gets what they call a placebo or a sugar pill. So let's walk backwards and jump off from there.
Okay, so a clinical trial is just a very careful way of understanding whether a drug, in this case, lecanemab, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. And the only way for us to know whether it works or not in people is to give it to people. That's just the way that clinical trials work. So we have a bunch of people who have volunteered for the study. In this case, it was about 1,900 people that decided to sign up for the study for 1.5 years. And in this particular study, it's what's called a phase 3 clinical trial. So phase 3 just means it is a late stage clinical trial. It has gotten past basic questions about does it work or is it safe? And now they're asking questions of does it make a difference in most people? And so a phase 3 clinical trial is usually designed to be run in several hundred people over 1 to 2 years. And at the end of that, if the results are promising, the people who made the drug can ask the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, to approve it. And once it's approved, it can then become available for people to buy. So we are at the last major stage of deciding whether or not this drug works before asking the FDA to review the evidence and make a determination about whether to approve the drug for sale in the United States.
So, and since we're talking about, again, we're talking about clinical trials, I learned this a lot, and you mentioned stage 3. So I learned this a long time ago, that there are multiple stages. And as somebody once said to me, if the first time you hear about a drug, they show a rat or a mouse running through a maze, then you're quite a while away from that being at your local drugstore.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. So if we're talking about animal research, that's not one of the 3 stages. That's effectively stage 0 research. Stage 1 is also being known. They've kind of updated the name. It's now called first in human. So this is a very small study. They'll usually run it in about 10 people, maybe 20 if they're feeling fancy. And the question is this drug safe for people to take? Can they tolerate the medication? Are there a lot of side effects? Do they get sick? And so it needs to pass a phase 1 first in human trial. And then once it's been cleared, it will go to phase 2, which will now test it in usually maybe 50 or a few hundred people. And then the question is not just about is it safe? The question is, what is the right dose to give to people? What are the most common side effects? And does it seem to have an effect on something that matters to us? So in this case of lecanemab, does it seem to clear out some of this amyloid gunk? Does it seem to have an early indication around cognitive decline? And so once it passes that phase 2, where they figure out dosing, they figure out major side effects, and they figure out whether it has some positive impact on the things that you care about. And then they move it into a phase 3 trial, which is the big trial that they run for a long time. And then that, the question of that kind of a study is, does this work the way that we want it to work? In this case, does it meet the 2 major criteria that the FDA have, that they've required for a drug to pass to be called a treatment for Alzheimer's disease? So number 1, the FDA says that it has to get rid of that amyloid. And number 2, it has to slow cognitive decline. Every trial so far has not really clearly met both of those endpoints at the same time. But lecanemab seems like it may be on track to be the first drug to do so.
So did it work in the majority of the participants involved?
We don't know. We don't know exactly what percentage of participants responded positively versus not to the drug. We just know that overall, the individuals who got the drug did better over a year and a half compared to people who got placebo. And so, as you said, placebo used to be called a sugar pill because they would literally give you a pill that was made of sugar. Nowadays, it is identical to the study drug. So the pills look identical. It's just that one has the medicine and one doesn't. So they're as similar as you can make them. But we know that the group that got the actual drug did better than the group that didn't. They got rid of more amyloid. It slowed the rate of cognitive decline. We don't know if that was true for like 80% of people, 90% of people. We just don't have that information that's been publicly released yet. But it should be released within the next couple of months.
Okay. So this is an interesting question. So how does the FDA test it differently than a clinical trial? Is it more rigorous? Do they, for a drug like this, and I guess that I'm going to translate English to English. We saw the vaccine for COVID come out in it seemed like a blink of an eye.
Yes.
for a drug like this, as we were just saying, there's the non-human part, which is the animals running around the maze, and then there's phase 1, 2, and 3, which can take quite a while. So I guess, does it test it differently than it does other drugs?
So the FDA doesn't actually run their own studies when it comes to most of these drugs. So what they do is they set requirements for how these studies are supposed to be run, how they can be evaluated. And what they do is they come in after phase 3. The company says, we've got phase 1, 2, and 3 data. It looks good. Can you give this your stamp of approval? What the FDA does is they convene a group of scientists. who review the evidence in excruciating detail. They look at absolutely everything. And then they will make a recommendation to the FDA. The FDA will then meet a few months later, and they'll say, based on the recommendation, based on the data that we see available, we are going to approve or we are going to not approve this particular drug. So FDA doesn't usually do their own research, but they do rely on research scientists to run a well-designed study, and then they rely on another group of scientists to check the first group of scientists' work.
So about a year ago, I think it was about a year ago this time, we heard about another drug. I can't pronounce. Okay, you know what drug I'm talking about.
Aducanumab. Yeah.
Yes, that drug.
Yeah.
And the reviews weren't so positive. So what was the difference between the two? And I'm being what's the word I'm trying to think? Politically correct.
Yeah, I understand that you're being diplomatic here. What's interesting is that aducanumab, which was which started this firestorm of controversy, and lecanamab are they're drugs that are developed by the same company, and it's funny because the reaction to these studies couldn't be more different. With aducanumab, we had a lot of irregularities in how the trial was run. So if you've ever heard the phrase, you can't change horses midstream, with aducanumab, they tried to change horses midstream. They basically set up a study, and then halfway through, they said, oh, wait, we want to change a bunch of things. They changed a bunch of things, and then they finished the study. They said nothing worked, and then they came back 6 months later and said, oh, wait, no, it totally did work. And then the data that they released didn't really support their conclusions. And then they tried to submit for approval anyway. So a lot of really unusual things happened that made most scientists say, we're not too sure about this one. And so I think that was the storm of controversy, because even the second group of scientists that FDA convened said, we're still not too sure about this. FDA heard their skepticism and said, you know what, let's approve it. And so I think most people were surprised that the FDA ignored the advice of their own team of scientists. And so that, I think, put a bad taste in everybody's mouth about kind of this whole process of trying to treat Alzheimer's disease, because we have very clear endpoints. You got to clear out the amyloid. You got to slow cognitive decline. And if you can do both of those things, you're good. And if you can't, go back to the drawing board. With aducanumab, it didn't seem like they did that in a clean way. And so there were a lot of concerns, and there still are a lot of concerns about whether the drug works. It's not that it doesn't work. It's not that it does work. It's just that we don't know. With lecanamab, it seems as though there was no changing of horses midstream. We do have clear evidence that both of those two critical endpoints have been met. So again, even though it's the same company, it does seem like this is an easier decision this time around.
All right, so I want to jump in the Wayback Machine. I work in the world of research now, but I've been around in this field for over 2 decades, and I've seen what we thought were promising drugs that didn't quite meet that hurdle that you were talking about with lecanamab. And so and I also got to admit this, I've got to know researchers who took it personal when their drugs failed. And so I guess I'm going to ask you, what derails a drug when it looks so promising? And I'm not talking about what we were just talking about. I'm just talking about research. You're a researcher. Researchers in general, you guys take this personal. You really do, and I love that.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering. I've heard some examples of. I'm not going to mention its name because this was well over a decade ago of a promising drug that failed because it was an international trial, and it failed because there was a small number. It was like less than, I want to say 50 people had brain inflammation that was deemed caused by the drug, and they ended the trial. And I remember, like, as I said, I knew some of the researchers, and I found out because I went to go visit one of my friends. We were going to lunch, and I went to go pick him up, and he was. I'm not going to say the man was in tears, but I'm like, what happened? And he was sharing with me how they stopped his trial,
Mhm.
and that's the first time I realized this is more than just a job. And so I guess my question is what does it what causes a trial to fail that looks so promising?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's worth remembering that the vast majority, over 99% of Alzheimer's trials have failed.
Yeah.
The reason why they fail, there's a lot of different reasons. It could be anything from they couldn't get enough people to sign up for the study to they realized when they went from, say, a phase two kind of dosing study to a phase three efficacy study, where they might have realized that, oh, now that we're trying this in a much broader group of people, not everybody's reacting the way that we thought. It could be the fact of the matter that that there are no side effects. Maybe there's nothing dangerous about the drug, but it doesn't quite change that trajectory as much as we hoped it would. So instead of maybe you need a threshold of it changing cognitive decline by, say, 20%, and it's like 18.5%. It's just shy of that threshold, and it doesn't make it that way. So there are lots of reasons why a trial doesn't end up working and that it doesn't end up making it. The many trials in Alzheimer's disease have failed for a wide variety of reasons. But one of the things that's really remarkable that I think is a lot harder for the public to see is that every time that we have failed, we have gotten a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer to that threshold. So, while people are talking about lecanemab and thinking that it's really interesting and special, it's not necessarily that there's something miraculous about lecanemab. It's more just that it has learned from the mistakes that came before. And my
Mm.
hope is that, as we hear about more and more and more Alzheimer's therapeutics in the next 1 to 2 years, we'll more consistently clear that hurdle for being an effective treatment for Alzheimer's disease. So, I can't promise anything because I haven't seen the data. Nobody's paying me. But my hope is that, if lecanemab is able to be approved, then that will be a positive sign for some of the other drugs coming down the pipeline that they have a shot as well. And so then we open up, the opportunities for not whether there is a treatment for Alzheimer's disease, but which treatment is right for you and your family at this time. And that is, a huge sea change compared to where we are now.
So this is an interesting question that I got. So if the FDA approves it,
Mhm.
what would the next steps be? Would I be able to run down to my corner store and grab it? Would there be other hurdles before it starts to be cranked out, for the general public?
Yeah, so there are a couple of complicating factors here. So I won't get it too far into the weeds, but the first thing to think about is, what does FDA approval mean? So the FDA
Mm.
has more than one pipeline of approval for their drugs. What we are all expecting is that this will go through what's called the accelerated approval pipeline. And so accelerated approval means that it will be FDA approved, but that there will be some conditions on the back end. Like FDA may say, "Oh, it's approved. You can go out and buy it, but we're going to review the evidence in 5 years and make a determination for full approval." So we'll need to see what kind of accelerated approval pathway pipeline that looks like, but it shouldn't have any short-term impacts on whether the drug is available, let's say in 2023. It may have an impact on
Mhm.
whether the drug is available in 2030. The second thing that needs to be considered is the pricing for the drug. With the last approved therapy, aducanumab, there was a lot of controversy because it was very, very expensive. We don't know what the pricing will look like for lecanemab, but my hope is that it will be affordable. And if it's not, then there needs to be a consideration by Medicare. So there's a big group of from Medicare called PDUFA that will come up and make a decision on whether Medicare, that is the federal government, will pay for this drug. And if they do, then not only does it become available, then it becomes really accessible for the vast majority of Americans over 65. So those are kind of like the two big hurdles that are left. Trying to see what conditions FDA puts on approval, and then number two is whether Medicare will pay for it to make sure that it's affordable for the people who need it most.
You know, it's interesting. Again, I've been around for a while in this world, and I remember, I believe it was Memento that had already been approved in Europe, and the FDA, it's almost as if they had no choice but to fast track it, because people in America were already trying to find ways to get it from Europe. So so we've been here before. That's my way of saying it. Other than access, are there other things people should consider when it comes to this, to taking on a new drug of this type of thing?
Yes, there are a couple of really big things to consider. The first thing that is going to be important for most people is thinking about who was involved in the clinical trial. And that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. One way to think about this is, how bad or how advanced was the Alzheimer's disease for individuals who were part of the study. So this particular trial, Lecanamab, focused on individuals in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. So they were worse than if they had mild cognitive impairments. They didn't have moderate or severe Alzheimer's disease. And so we don't quite know how this drug worked in individuals who were either more or less severe in their presentation of dementia. That will be something that we'll be looking closely at the data to see if there are any hints, and that will also play a determination in whether FDA recommends this drug for anybody living with Alzheimer's disease or only for people at a certain stage of the disease. The other thing to think about is who was included in terms of racial and ethnic diversity, educational attainment, things of that nature. In other words, is somebody who looks like you, were they part of the study, and were they part of the study in sufficient numbers that you can feel confident that it would work for you? One of the nice things about the Lecanamab study is that, again, we don't have the specifics, but 1 in 4 individuals was either Black or Latino, which is a first in the Alzheimer's space. And it gives you enough data to know whether it's likely to work if you are Black or Latino. So my hope is that once we have more data available, once it's published and peer reviewed, you'll be able to talk to your doctor and ask them directly, does this drug work for myself or my family at this time? Where was somebody who looks like us reflected in the study? And for the first time, I think you'll be able to have a clear answer to those questions. So that is another really exciting possibility here.
All right. I was going to ask you that question. So, Dr. Jonathan Jackson, founder and executive director of CARE, assistant Harvard professor, med school professor. If there's one thing you want folks to remember of our conversation, what would that one thing? What's your take-home message today?
So, Mike, you and I have talked many times before, and I think I always leave you with the same message. Today's going to be no different, but it really does mark the beginning of a whole new era. And the takeaway message is that there is a huge amount of reasons, and I think there's a huge amount of evidence to be very, very hopeful and excited for a world without Alzheimer's disease. Lecanemab is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of the journey. And so no matter what happens at the next stages of FDA approval, it shows that we're at least partially on the right path. And we've got enough other drugs in the pipeline, enough other evidence about lifestyle and diet and exercise changes that you can make to lower your risk, that if you put them all together, that plus the looming possibility of blood tests for Alzheimer's disease means that we are not so far away from a world where we can manage this. And then that means that we're not so far from a world where we can eliminate and eradicate it entirely. So it is a great time to be excited and hopeful. And I know that within the next 5 years, we will think about Alzheimer's disease entirely different than the way that we do right now.
That's why I like hanging out with you. Jonathan, say howdy to everybody back at CARE. And I'm going to have to drag you back on here because this is us.
Thanks for having me, Mike. And good luck, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. So that was a really interesting conversation. I'm glad we were able to do it. I'm glad that it's a conversation that I think people should be having with their families. But if you're interested in taking this, and you can find out more information. As always, we're going to give you some resources at the end. But now let's go to our poll that we started to do earlier, but we stopped because them gremlins was just messing with us today. So Alexa, if you could throw the poll up on the screen again. We will. So the question is, which of the following facts about lecanamab, I got it right, which of the following facts about lecanamab is false? That's not true. Which one is not true? A, lecanamab could slow the progression of cognitive decline. Or B, lecanamab could eradicate cognitive decline. So which one would it be? A, lecanamab could slow the progression of cognitive decline. Or B, lecanamab could eradicate cognitive decline. Now remember, as Jonathan said, cognitive decline means that basically as you're getting older, you're not having normal memory lapses. For example, when you're 70-something years old, you may have a little bit more difficulty remembering something from way back in the day, but you're still able to remember. I'll give you a perfect example. I was at a function just recently, ran into somebody I hadn't seen in about 8 or 9 years. I could not remember her name, and it hit me about 4 hours later. I was like, that's Carmen. So, and that's normal. The older we get, the harder the longer it takes us to remember things. So we got it. And the answer, we've got 100% of folks said the answer is A. The answer is B. And I'm going to read this to you. Again, the question was, which of the following facts about lecanamab is false? Lecanamab could slow the progression of cognitive decline, or B, it can eradicate, it can stop cognitive decline. And the answer is B, that this drug has been shown to slow the progression, not eradicate. We still have a ways to go, but we are hopeful for that. So the answer is B. So I stand corrected. Oh, it's actually A. We've got it right. As always, you guys are, wow, this has been just a crazy show. So the answer is A. It slows the progression of cognitive decline. It doesn't eradicate it, but it could. But right now, it's going to slow it down. So, wow, I'm telling you, this has just been a crazy day. So, Alexa, let's throw up some resources, okay? And it's going to come up. There we go. So we have national resources, lecanamab for people with Alzheimer's disease, Clarity AD, from the National Institute on Aging. That's from alzheimers.gov. From the National Institute of Aging, we've got the National Institute of Aging statement on report of lecanamab reducing cognitive decline in Alzheimer's clinical trials. At my place, the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, here in Boston, we've got our Madrix roadmap to research participation. And if you'd like to find out more about clinical trials, you can reach out to us here at Madrix, Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers, and you can get more information on how you can participate in clinical trials. Jonathan mentioned it, that we need diversity in clinical trials. We need people from all backgrounds, educational status, you name it. Clinical trials should look like the people that are impacted by the disease. And because no one particular group is impacted by a disease, then everyone should participate in a clinical trial. Not everyone, but all groups should participate in a clinical trial. Um, and again, we use lecanemab as a case study only of what to ask and what to consider when you're thinking about taking this particular medication or when other new drugs come out. It's a conversation starter. That's what we're trying to say. Is that this show today was to help you have and start a conversation about participating in clinical research and taking new drugs, taking new pharmaceuticals that come out when a new drug comes out. It's the opportunity for family, friends, doctors. You should talk to your doctor about this. It's that opportunity to again, once again, start the conversation, but understand that there is hope out there. And as always, I'm going to wrap up by giving you my final thought. You know, people ask me all the time, why have I been doing this for over 25 years, 24 years? And my answer is simply this, that I don't do this for today. I do this. I work, I educate, I help, I counsel people, family, and friends on what Alzheimer's is and what research is, because one day, and that day is coming, we're going to erect this disease is going to be a footnote in history. And I'll be able to say I was part of that fight to get rid of it. But more importantly, and this is the other reason, that when I'm telling my grandson about his great great grandmother, I don't need to tell him that she had Alzheimer's disease, because that will not be a disease that he will have to worry about. And that's why we do what we do. So again, my name is Mike Kincaid from the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. This has been Brain Info Live, the craziest show we've done so far, but it's 17 and we got it in the can. And I will say, take care. And as always, I'll see you around the neighborhood. Bye-bye, everyone. All right.